Welcome to the sales difference. Now this segment we're going to talk about how to facilitate differentiating factors for the sales meeting. Hi, I'm Tim Hagen from Progress Coaching, and what I want to share with you are techniques and strategies not only that we leverage, but that we've actually taught and facilitated with our customers. Now the sales difference is where a salesperson differentiates himself or herself by going against the grain of what is typically done in the sales industry or their particular industry. Now again, the sales difference is about being different, obviously, but it's about how we sell and communicate that's different, not what we sell that is different. So when we think about selling, let's be blunt. We are creatures of habit. Walk by some cubicles, mid-afternoon or mid-morning, and hear people leaving voicemails. Hi, this is Tim calling from Progress Coaching. I just wanted to introduce myself. Just introduce myself. Boring. The voicemail's been deleted. You are one of 12 people who just called during that hour. So, the sales difference is about standing out, taking some risks, not at the risks of you or the company or your sales team, but some risks in the minds of your prospects. Would you be willing to make 20 calls where you actually had really successful interactions with 5 people versus making 150 calls where you blend in with the rest of the salespeople in your industry and maybe have 1 or 2 interested prospects? Are you willing to get outside of your comfort zone? The same principle applies when we facilitate sales meetings, whether done in person or via conference call. So, you've got an appointment. You have to facilitate a meeting. You need to prep the meeting. What do we typically do? We put it in our calendar and we go on to prospecting. We go on to the next thing. We go on to the proposal we have to create. But what if you did something to prep the meeting that gave you an element of differentiation? What could you do before the meeting that was different? Now, during the meeting, whether it's in person or via conference call. Now, if it's done via conference call, my advice is to use a webcam. It's amazing to me. I have a technology client. They thought this was the most brilliant idea. And I said, this is actually really simple technology, and you're a tech company. And then after the meeting, what can you do that would be different? Now, sadly, sending thank you cards is still different today because we're so busy. When I had a sales rep say to me years ago, yeah, but what do you do if you don't have time to send thank you cards? I go, you send them. The audience started to laugh. He said, well, that didn't answer my question. I said, no, you answered your own question. If you're saying that, isn't that what your customers are saying about everybody? Isn't that what your competition is saying? Then you find the time to send it to stand out. Or you at least be honest with yourself, you've made a decision to blend in. So what we're going to talk about during this presentation is how to be different, to prep the meeting, how to facilitate during the meeting that's different, and then to do things after the meeting that give you differentiation factors. So, pre-meeting ideas. Send your questions beforehand. Not rocket science. Send them some meetings, information beforehand. Then correspond before you meet. Just say, if you're willing to email, it'll make our conference call, it'll make our meeting next week a lot more time effective. And I want to be considerate to your time. That type of messaging to a prospect is unbelievably different and considerate. Here's the big thing. Send custom materials beforehand. So you're watching a presentation right now that is done where I hook up a microphone and I talk over a PowerPoint. So often when I'm collaborating with a prospect and we send emails back and forth, I will send them specific ideas of what they can do, not what I can sell. Of what they can do, not what I can sell. And the reason I'm stressing that, it's an element of differentiation. I'm giving away my expertise before I actually try to sell it. So if you can correspond beforehand and send questions where you're collaborating back and forth, it will really serve you well. The cool thing is, only send 3 questions per email. You don't want it to come off overwhelming, and keep the questions simple. Now, during the meeting, have your questions written out. Have them printed. Have big circles to the right. Let your customers see those notes, especially if you're in front of them in person. Demonstrate active listening. Bob, here's what I've heard you say. Is there anything I've potentially missed? That seems so simple. Then why don't we do it? Now here's a big one, and I really, really want you to hear this. When we think about having a meeting with a customer and where there's interest and mutual interest in both sides, one of the most effective things that you could do is to say, our next step is to put together a proposal of ideas, and I'd love to come back and present those to you. And if the customer says yes, just say, could I ask you a very strong question right now? And the prospect will look at you and say, oh, sure, what? Could we schedule that right now? We are so busy, and I just don't want to come back and be remiss in getting back to you, or potentially end up chasing you via voicemail or what have you. If we could schedule that now, my time is just really busy. The company's actually having an awesome year. Here's why you do that. Now, some of you might be thinking, well, wait a minute, aren't you kind of telling them you're too busy? No. What you're really wanting to do is send a message. You're lucky to be with me. I am so busy, I need to schedule right now and here. And what that does is it condenses the sales process. It gets you to own the next step. But it sends a message to your prospect. I am so busy. It's really wise if we could schedule that now. Whether you have a phone, an iPad, your laptop, make sure you can schedule on the spot. Now, post-meeting. Send a thank you card with your picture on it. We use Vistaprint, and we'll have notepads where we'll just scratch out some thank you notes, or we'll have thank you cards. But make sure your picture's on it. Don't just get bland things at the store. Get something that's unique to you. Number 2, leave curiosity voicemails late at night. I will often leave a voicemail after 10 o'clock at night, knowing I'm going to get the customer's direct line and their voicemail, so I don't interrupt them. I'm not calling their cell phone, by the way. And I'll say, you know what, Jennifer, I was thinking about our conversation. I was reviewing some notes, and I've got a couple ideas that I think you're going to find a little unconventional. If you have time between 9 and 11 tomorrow, shoot me an email. I'm going to be at my desk. I will call you within 2 minutes of that email. But I've got an idea I don't think you guys have ever done. And what I'm doing is I'm piquing her interest, hopefully with some curiosity. What I'm also saying is I'm up late working for you. I'm on it. I got some ideas specific to your challenges and problems. Now, not all the time, but where the opportunity presents itself, send a note to the boss. If you have someone you've really enjoyed, find out who their boss is. Don't tell them. Call back to the switchboard or ask somebody in the company and say, who does Michelle report to? Where you have really positive interactions, share that. And say, by the way, Tom, I was doing a project. I'm working with Michelle. She is just a joy to work with, and she represents your company really well. I wanted to just take the time to share that with you. You know darn well he's going to share that with her. Now, you only do that if you feel that way. You don't do it to be over the top or pretentious. You want to be genuine, authentic, and honest. Last, send meeting notes summary. No sales material. Send a 2 to 3 page outline or whatever the notes are of what you've heard, and have them review it and say, Michelle, here are the notes from our meeting. Is there anything I've missed? If you could just confirm that this is correct, then I'm going to go forward with our proposal set of ideas. But I just wanted to see what your feedback was. And what you're doing is you're demonstrating, I want to be in alignment with you. Here's one of my major suggestions. And I know if you're a salesperson, you're going to hate this, but I want you to love this. But one of the things that I want you to think about is how this will position you differently. We all make assumptions, present company included. I want you to think about getting together with 4 people and having practice sessions. One person plays the role of salesperson, one person plays the role of customer, one person plays the role of timer for the salesperson, one plays the role of timer for the customer. What you do is you actually practice having your meetings. Now, we all hear the statistics of what you should do, 80% of the time the customer should talk or 70%. Time this. I'm telling you, I've done this at client sites. Time this. So the person who's a timer for the salesperson, every time the salesperson talks, they hit a stopwatch. When they stop and the customer starts to talk, they hit stop. And they keep a running total of the total time that the salesperson is talking. The person assigned to the customer does the same thing. When the customer's talking, they time it. It is amazing how much we understand that principle. And when I have done this at client sites or had my clients do this with their people, it has been very rare that the customer has ever talked over 50% of the time. Let's be honest, what's one of our most fundamental flaws as salespeople? We're thinking about what we want to talk about while the customer's talking. And so I think if you really practice this time element, it will serve you unbelievably well. And the people who have done this will raise their eyebrows and said, boy, I'm happy I did this. I never knew. I said, of course not. We don't time ourselves in a sales meeting. But if you can perfect the ability to ask questions and listen and actively listen and paraphrase back, you have positioned yourself differently than the competition. Last note, here's a major scoring suggestion. Have another person, if you want to bring a fifth person into it, is have another person actually count the number of open-ended questions versus close-ended. Count the number of times they interrupted versus the number of times they demonstrated active listening. Count the number of times they delivered benefits versus the number of times they delivered features when they should have delivered benefits. And it's called factual-based scoring. Very simple. But you can see a trend of where people pigeonhole themselves. I'll give you an example. We had a top salesperson at one of our client sites literally was asking on average 7 close-ended questions for every 3 open-ended. And this guy was so open-minded. One thing I loved about him is he really sought feedback. He said, I'm actually having a great year. He goes, I'm actually thinking of deals right now that I didn't win of where I pigeonholed myself. Really honest comment. So one of the toughest things that we have to do as sales professionals, be honest. Where are our strengths and where do we have opportunities to improve? But this practice session suggestion will serve you very well. I hope this presentation has helped. If you're interested in hearing about our Sales Difference program, I'd love to chat with you. Or if you're looking for a speaker for coaching and you want to learn more about our coaching improv session, I'd love to chat with you. I hope this has helped.